I want you to imagine something. Imagine trusting someone so completely that you would hand them the keys to your entire life without a second thought. That's how I felt about two people. The man I was supposed to marry. And the woman I called my sister. My name is Mia. And for 7 years, I lived in a bubble. I had a stable career, a fiancé named Ethan who made me feel safe, and a best friend, Vanessa, who had been by my side since we were teenagers with braces and bad haircuts. We were inseparable. I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. Ethan was the quiet, dependable type. He remembered how I took my coffee. He held my hand during scary movies. And Vanessa, she was the wild one. The one who pushed me to say yes when Ethan proposed. She cried with me when we picked out my wedding dress. She was supposed to stand beside me at the altar, but bubbles pop. And when they do, they don't just disappear, they explode in your face, leaving shards of glass embedded in your skin. It was 3 weeks before the wedding. The invitations were sent, the venue was booked. I was running late after a work meeting. I walked up the steps to the apartment Ethan and I shared, feeling that familiar flutter of excitement to see him. I unlocked the door and heard music playing from our bedroom. I smiled, thinking he was home early to surprise me, then I heard a laugh. Not Ethan's laugh. A higher pitch. A sound I knew intimately. It was Vanessa's laugh. My hand froze on the door handle. My brain couldn't process what I was hearing. Why is my best friend in my bedroom? Why is the door closed? I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. I stood there in the hallway, and I listened. I heard whispers. The rustle of sheets. Then Vanessa's voice, clear as a bell, "We can't keep doing this, Ethan. We have to tell her." And Ethan's reply, after the wedding. "It's too messy right now. She'll be devastated." The floor dropped out from under me. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the way they discussed my devastation like it was an inconvenience. Something to be managed. A box to check off. I didn't open that door. I turned around, walked back out, and sat in my car for 3 hours. I watched the sun set through the windshield, and I let the betrayal shatter me. Because I knew, if I went back in that night, I'd be the woman crying on the floor, begging for explanations. And I refused to give them that satisfaction. The next day, I came home. I looked Ethan in the eyes and told him I had a terrible headache. I kissed him on the cheek. 2 days later, I met Vanessa for a wedding planning brunch. She hugged me so tight, telling me how excited she was. I hugged her back, and I felt nothing but ice forming in my chest. Here's what they didn't know about me. I wasn't just a marketing manager. And I wasn't just the heartbroken fiancé. I had a secret, one that was about to change everything. That secret was my grandmother. Before she passed, she left me something I never talked about. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to build my own life. She left me a majority stake in a mid-sized corporate consulting firm, a firm that specialized in high-end marketing strategies. I never told Ethan. I never told Vanessa. It wasn't who I was. I wanted to prove I could succeed on my own merit, but after that day in the hallway, everything changed. The version of me that loved them died in that hallway. And in her place, something much quieter, much more patient, was born. Over the next 2 months, I did something that looked like forgiveness. I told Ethan I had cold feet. I called off the wedding. I let him believe he had dodged a bullet. I let Vanessa think I needed space. I even let them believe I was the one who broke. They moved on quickly. Within weeks, Vanessa was openly dating Ethan. They didn't hide it anymore. They thought I was out of the picture. Meanwhile, I made a few phone calls. I contacted the board of that consulting firm. I used my inheritance to quietly buy the remaining shares. By the time I was done, I wasn't just a stakeholder. I was the sole owner, and then Vanessa landed her dream job. Senior marketing director at that very same firm. She called me, crying with joy. "Mia, I got it. This is everything I've ever wanted." I cried with her on the phone. I congratulated her. I told her I was so proud. She had no idea. None. I didn't fire her. I didn't expose the affair. That would have been too fast, too easy. Real revenge isn't loud. Real revenge is letting someone build their dream on a foundation you control, and then slowly, quietly, removing every brick. I became her best friend again. I invited her over for wine. I listened to her complain about her new boss. I let her vent about the impossible deadlines, the demanding clients. I nodded along. I offered advice. I was the shoulder she cried on, but in the boardroom, under a different name, I was the one making the decisions. I started small. I rejected her most brilliant campaign ideas, not because they were bad, but because I made sure they were not the right fit. I watched her stay late, working weekends, trying to prove herself. I saw the dark circles under her eyes. I saw her confidence begin to crack. Every time she succeeded, I raised the bar higher. Every time she asked for a promotion, I told management she needed more time to grow. I made her feel like she was failing, even though she was working harder than she ever had. And Ethan? Without the thrill of the secret affair, their relationship crumbled. He missed the stability I had given him. He started calling me, asking to meet for coffee. I always said no, but I made sure Vanessa saw the missed calls on his phone. One night, she showed up at my apartment, sobbing. She told me Ethan was distant. That she was failing at work. That she felt like she was losing everything. She looked at me, her eyes red and swollen, and said, "Mia, I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only one who's always been there." I held her. I stroked her hair. And I felt nothing. Because every tear she cried was a tear I had already cried, alone, in my car, 3 weeks before my wedding. The difference was, she was crying on the shoulder of the person who was quietly dismantling her life. 8 months passed. 8 months of watching her crumble, all while she believed I was her only lifeline. And then I decided it was time. I called a meeting in the main conference room. I told the senior staff I would be attending in person. Vanessa arrived that morning looking exhausted. She had no idea why the meeting was called. She just knew her boss had been putting pressure on her for months, and she was terrified of being let go. She walked into the conference room, took her seat near the middle of the table. She was reviewing her notes, mentally preparing to defend her latest campaign. The door opened. I walked in, not as Mia, her best friend, but as the owner of the firm. I sat at the head of the table. I watched the color drain from her face. She stared at me, her mouth half open, like she was trying to form a word that wouldn't come. Her hands started shaking. The room was silent. The other executives looked between us, confused. I didn't scream. I didn't list her betrayals. I simply looked at her and said, "You have 2 weeks to find another position. Your references will be neutral. I won't destroy your reputation, because I'm not you. But I wanted you to know what it feels like to have your world built on a lie, only to watch it crumble." Her voice cracked. "Mia, I'm so sorry. Please." I just stood up. I walked out of the conference room, down the hallway, and out of the building. I never went back to that office. She tried to call me after. 17 times in one night. I didn't answer. She showed up at my apartment building a few days later, but I had already moved. Not running from her, just finally, truly free. Moral and closure. A lot of people ask me if I feel guilty. Sometimes I wonder if I should. But then I remember the woman I was before, the one who trusted too easily, who believed that love meant never questioning the people closest to her. That woman had to disappear for me to survive. I sold my shares in the firm 6 months later. I moved to a city by the ocean, somewhere quiet, where no one knew my story. I opened a small art gallery. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I rebuilt my life, not from the ruins they left me in, but from the ground up, on my own terms, and every once in a while, I see Vanessa's name pop up on social media. She moved to a different state. She's okay. And I'm glad. Because holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The real revenge wasn't taking her job or watching her cry. The real revenge was realizing I didn't need her apology to move on. I didn't need Ethan's regret to feel whole. I gave myself something they never could. Peace.so. If you're watching this, and you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, know this. You don't have to destroy them to win. You just have to build a life so full that they no longer have a place in it. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my place?